Deadly rip currents strike Florida's coast. What you can do to stay safe.
You should be going parallel to the shore.
Why did a restaurant owner intentionally flood his own business?
To actually keep the dirty floodwaters out of his restaurant.
Back from extinction. A closer look at the ethics of reviving a forgotten species.
I worry that this sells conservation a kind of a bad message, namely we can bring back things and not worry about it.
And a dramatic rescue caught on camera. How crews were able to save a woman stuck on the side of a cliff.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm Angela Brown. Severe weather pushed through parts of the Ohio Valley and Mid-Atlantic yesterday. There were no reported tornadoes, but there was plenty of hail. You can hear it there. West Virginia saw the worst of the hail, especially near the capital of Charleston. There were reports of quarter to golf ball sized hail falling across the state. Now, this big enough to damage cars and also homes. That's one reason many drivers pulled over to wait out the storm. There are no reports of any injuries. We'll explain how hail forms coming up a little bit later. Meantime, nearly 2.5 million people are still under flood warnings this morning. Minor flooding is happening along rivers and streams in Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas. This follows last week's massive flooding upstream along the Ohio River. Ahead of that disaster, a restaurant owner in Kentucky preemptively flooded his own business with clean, fresh water to make sure the dirty water couldn't even get in. Meteorologist Evan O'Regan explains the science behind that decision.
Andrew Masterson, co-owner of Captain's Quarters Riverside Grill near Louisville, Kentucky, did this to actually keep the dirty floodwaters out of his restaurant. A pretty smart move. And the reason this works is because the fresh water inside the restaurant will create a barrier to equalize pressure and prevent the floodwaters from then entering the building. That's because the pressure of the floodwater will not be able to overcome the existing pressure created by the fresh water in the restaurant. Now, Masterson says he filled his restaurant with about 3 feet of water, fresh water, using sinks, faucets, and well water pumps after removing all the kitchen appliances and electronic panels, of course, to prevent anything dangerous from happening. That is enough to keep floodwaters of up to 5 to 6 feet out of the restaurant. So now you know, if you're a business owner and expecting a bit of flooding, maybe think a little bit outside of the box.
Aftershocks could continue today in Southern California, one day after a 5.2 earthquake struck that region. Here's cell phone video from inside an office building in San Diego. You can see the computer monitors shaking there. The person recording said the quake lasted about 15 to 20 seconds. The shaking was felt as far away as Los Angeles. Jeff Wynn spoke to the family who first thought was keeping their baby safe.
Ashley Pinnock's cat went flying off the couch. A split second before she grabbed her baby Michael from his playpen to run outside as her home shook Monday morning in eastern San Diego County.
I heard it first, and then when I heard it, I felt it. And when I felt it, I was like, I have to get the baby.
The mother of 4 and her husband Andrew were home with Michael while their other kids were at school. They say their home, which was built in the 1960s, mostly made of wood, added to the sensory overload.
We have a large beam that runs through the center of our house, and I heard a cracking noise. And so my first instinct was to get out because I didn't want to be underneath that beam.
To be able to feel something like of that nature and that power is terrifying.
The 5.2 quake also rattled Mountain Spirits liquor store in the town of Julian. Dylan Carnero recorded video of the mess it created. Fortunately, he was in a back room instead of his normal breakfast spot.
I probably would have been hit by like 3 heavy, like 750s for sure.
He believes he lost about $500 of merchandise.
It was just straight up the aggressive shaking in total, the bottles, and then my heart even a little bit. Like, obviously it was scary.
When the quake hit here, Andrew and Ashley got alerts on their phones after the shaking, so they're having new conversations about preparing for a big quake.
When you live in an old house and you see the modern houses, they're made to withstand and deal with a lot of that stuff. So I'm not sure if this one is.
Video from the San Diego Zoo shows the African elephant's reaction to Monday's quake. Zoo officials say the elephants engaged in behavior known as alert circle. It's meant to protect the young and entire herd from threats. The group of elephants can be seen instinctively encircling an elephant calf to protect it. They resumed normal behavior after only a few minutes. No damage was reported at that zoo. Many schools are on spring break this week, which means families are flocking to Florida beaches, but it's a dangerous time as well, as rip currents killed at least one swimmer just last weekend. Tiffany Rizzo has advice on staying safe at the beach.
Rough waters over the weekend led to a rescue mission caught on camera at Carlin Park in Jupiter.
Wow, they got sucked right out.
In this video, a lifeguard seen swimming out to rescue 3 kids caught in a dangerous rip current.
They're all back in safely. That could have been tragic.
Palm Beach County Fire Rescue Captain Tom Reyes says it can happen quick.
That's why the safest thing to do is to be at a guarded beach with lifeguards on duty, because that's their job. That's what they do, is keep an eye on us and keep an eye on the situation.
And while the water is calm now, the lifeguards here at Midtown are explaining what to do if you are caught in a rip current.
Yeah, so Tristan's going to be out in the water explaining you should be going parallel to the shore once you're in a rip current, and that'll break the grip of the rip.
So swim parallel and also try and stay calm.
They're dangerous when you panic and you do not handle yourself in the correct manner, because they sweep you out, and a lot of people, when they get swept out, they don't realize it, and then once they can't stand anymore, they start to panic.
And if you can't swim, lifeguard Tristan Cox demonstrates how you should alert beachgoers and lifeguards.
Any signal, any make noise, splashes, anything you can do to get our attention is the best.
Well, today marks 113 years since the Titanic sank after hitting an iceberg in the North Atlantic. Meteorologist Christian Bridges explains how weather played a role in the tragedy.
So, for starters, let's take a look at how the Titanic collided with an iceberg in the first place. It all begins up in Greenland with the ice sheet there. When chunks of this ice sheet break off into the ocean, they become icebergs. And as the icebergs drift, they often get caught up in the Labrador Current, which pulls them south into the busy Atlantic shipping lanes. Now, the Titanic's journey from its departure in Ireland to New York City brought it right across what is known as Iceberg Alley, where many of those icebergs from Greenland end up. Of course, we know what happened when Titanic entered Iceberg Alley, but why was the Titanic unable to see the iceberg in time to avoid a collision? This is where the weather that night comes into play. On that night, April 14th, there was very cold air in place with a high pressure system keeping things very calm in the North Atlantic. This was behind a cold front, and it was very cold. It was very clear. So calm and cold that the ocean was as smooth as a lake with no waves. And this is very important, as those waves hitting the floating icebergs, that creates foam, which makes them more visible. Also working against the Titanic's crew was the fact that there was no moon that night. It was a new moon, so there was no moonlight to illuminate any of the icebergs in the ship's path. Finally, as the Titanic reached Iceberg Alley, a haze caused by the interaction of that cold Labrador Current with the warm waters of the Gulf Stream nearby led to further reduced visibility. So all 3 of these factors made the iceberg nearly impossible to see until it was too late to turn the ship out of the path of the collision. While there's many other factors that played into the ship sinking, the weather undoubtedly played a large role in that fateful voyage.
And check out this video from California. A hiker was on the Pacific Crest Trail east of Los Angeles on Sunday when she slipped down a cliffside and had to be rescued. Officers who rescued her said it was intense because of the precarious location she was stuck. Another factor, she was exhausted after holding on in that position for a while, wearing a pack for over an hour. They were able to bear hug her, and basically the woman was able to climb onto the cliff with her. If you want to see the full video of the rescue, we have it posted on our YouTube page. And for all the latest weather news and video, be sure to check us out on your favorite social media platforms. To search the National Weather Desk or scan the QR code on the bottom left corner of your screen. And coming up on the National Weather Desk, hurricane season is less than 2 months away. We'll find out what experts are forecasting for the season. And we'll show you the new cold weather immersion suit that could allow people to survive in cold water for days.
I'm meteorologist Charlie Lopresti with a look at the Northeast. More unsettled weather returns to the Northeast today in the form of showers. There is a slight chance for a rumble of thunder. That's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There'll be a wide range in temperatures. Temps will range from 50s in northern New England down to 60s to near 70 back through New Jersey, southern New York, and parts of southern New England. That feature moves out on Wednesday, but in lingering upper low, keep a lot of clouds in place. There'll be seasonably cool conditions with a few mountain snow showers. Brighter skies return on Thursday.
Tracking our temperatures across the mid-Atlantic and numbers that are going to drop into the 50s overnight, eventually on our way to see some of those 60s on Tuesday afternoon. But Tuesday morning, we'll start off with breezy conditions. The wind's going to stay with us most of Tuesday as well. Going to see some mild conditions, maybe a stray shower late Tuesday. Wednesday is going to be cooler but dry. Those numbers are going to be climbing to the mid to upper 60s across the mid-Atlantic and even warmer for Easter weekend around the corner.
I'm meteorologist Charlotte Carl. We are expecting a beautiful day out there. For most of us, we're expecting seasonable afternoon high temperatures, with the exception of the Gulf Coast further south. We'll see the mid-80s along that east coast of Florida. We will see that front continue to sweep through the area. This will mainly impact our temperatures as we head through your Wednesday. A few isolated showers are possible as it makes its way through Florida, mostly along that I-4 corridor, and then south, it'll mostly just be that cloud boundary, and it'll be very weak by the time it makes its way to Miami.
The National Weather Desk.
Severe weather season is off to an active start. Meteorologist Chris Suchan takes a look at the current numbers and ones in the books.
Severe weather season 2025 off to a real fast start. I'm meteorologist Chris Suchan with a breakdown here of the year. This is the annual trend line we would see through the years. The count increases. And this is where we are so far, and we are ahead of the count by a big-time margin after a couple of real busy days with tornadoes, of course, one here early in April. Using the enhanced Fujita scale, we could see the intensity and the odds of that tornado occurring, of that intensity, going back to 2007. This is 2007 through this year so far. Here you see EF1, EF2. Notice as you get stronger to an EF3 tornado, you can see how the percentage of all the tornadoes we have seen have been EF3 and EF4 or an EF5. Now, this is just over 21,500 tornadoes going back to 2007. The percentage of those tornadoes that have been EF5 is only 0.04%. Those are the odds of having an EF5 tornado, extremely low in comparison to the weaker tornadoes. In fact, you have to go back to 2013, Moore, Oklahoma, in May. That was the last EF5 tornado.
Sometimes people confuse scud clouds for tornadoes, but as meteorologist Teresa Carter explains, they are much less dangerous and do not produce severe weather.
When severe weather enters your area, ominous clouds can fill the sky. A lot of times we will receive false reports of funnel clouds due to a low-lying cloud called a scud cloud. The term scud is actually an acronym standing for scattered cumulus under deck. These clouds are just smaller bits of condensation that aren't attached to the higher layers of the thick cumulonimbus storm clouds, and they do not rotate, which is the biggest difference between a scud cloud and a funnel cloud. Scud clouds can be caused by rising humid air that evaporates before reaching the main cloud due to mixing with dry air. While they look ominous, scud clouds are harmless and do not produce severe weather.
In addition to clouds, severe weather can also bring hail. It can be fascinating to see pieces of ice fall from the sky, but how exactly does it form? And why is some hail smaller than other times it can be the size of a baseball, for example? Meteorologist Dante Ricci explains.
Thunderstorms in Ripley, West Virginia produced a lot of hail. Jim Bush sending us video of the hailstones hitting his parked car in the driveway and also coating the ground. Now here's the science behind hail and why it forms. A thunderstorm has rising warm air. We call that an updraft. And what happens is raindrops reach the freezing level. In early spring, that freezing level is closer to the ground. In summer, it's higher up in the sky. But the bottom line is you get water droplets that freeze into ice above that level, and they continue to bounce off other rain and cloud droplets, allowing them to grow larger. Once they get too large, they fall with gravity, and that really depends on how strong that updraft is. A stronger storm has a bigger rush of air up into the sky, and in the springtime, there's not enough time for that ice to melt before it hits the ground. Now, normally, like you saw in the video, you would see anywhere from pea to penny-sized hail. That's more common. But once you start to see golf ball, tennis ball, even softball size, that's a really strong thunderstorm, and that's allowing that ice to sit in the updraft for a longer period of time. You're more likely to see those big ones in the summer. I'm meteorologist Dante Ricci.
When it comes to severe weather in the spring, you might not think cold water is a risk, but it can be during severe flooding events. A new cold water immersion suit could allow people to survive in cold water for days. The innovation was recently tested out in Alaska, where it could be very useful in emergency situations. Lauren Maxwell explains.
Clint Homestead is spending his day in an unusual position.
Both my arms are inside the suit. I'm hugging my torso.
Floating in a tub of icy water.
A little bit of a moist sauna.
Chilled to a balmy 32 degrees. Homestead works for Learn to Return, a survival training company that's testing and distributing a new type of cold weather immersion suit it says can save lives.
This can take survival in cold water, we hope, from hours to days. Really, and that's what the state needs.
The manufacturer says the suit has an unusual design.
I don't know if the camera can see, but you have access to the zipper to open from within.
Homestead showed us how he can wriggle his arms out of the sleeves to access an inner compartment where he can use his hands to eat, drink, and even send videos from his cell phone inside.
Right now, I have quite a bit of space in here. I took my hood, closed it off to contain some heat, and I'll be doing some isometric exercises if and when I get a little cooler. But other than that, I am in a cozy floating raft.
And last week, Colossal Biosciences announced that they have brought back the dire wolf from extinction. Since then, there has been a lot of buzz regarding the ethics of de-extinction. Emily Gracie spoke to an expert about this topic.
I'm suspicious in this case that we actually have a dire wolf. And the reason is that essentially what we've done is modified, we haven't, but they have modified gray wolf genes so that you get the appearance of something that looks like a dire wolf. It's because that you're modifying gray wolf genes that's really why I'm a bit suspicious. Best case scenario is this is a hybrid between gray wolves and dire wolves, because you are using the information from dire wolf genes to create, this remarkable, it's clearly a remarkable creature, whatever it is, right? Yeah.
What are the long-term impacts here if we start de-extincting other animals and bringing them into this world? Could it mess up entire ecosystems?
It certainly could. If you start thinking about the kinds of things that lived in North America, saber-toothed tigers, there were, giant ground sloths. If you wanted to bring those back, it would be remarkable to see creatures like that. Can we live with them in a way that's, makes sense? There's two other worries I have, one of which is if you spend money on these projects, what are you not spending money on, including other conservation projects? I know that Colossal is doing conservation work, but one is we sort of take our eye off other threatened or endangered species. That's one thought. The other one is I think there's a misnomer that appears, namely, for any species that goes extinct, you could just bring it back, and so we don't have to worry about extinction. And that's not true. One thing about de-extinction is DNA degrades over time. And so outside of about 10,000 years, you can't use that DNA. So we can only really bring back really recently extinct species at best, right? So I worry that this sells conservation a kind of a bad message, namely we can bring back things and not worry about it.
To hear more about the genetic engineering, check out this week's episode of our podcast, Off the Radar. You can find it anywhere you get your podcasts. And time now for a short break, but first we take in views of the Grand Canyon.
Well, very good. Tuesday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Andrew Buckmichael. A few showers, including some rain and even snow in Michigan today. But look at all the sun across the plains. It's going to be a beautiful day across the plains. Wall-to-wall sun thanks to some high pressure parked right over top of us. As we continue on into your Wednesday, a few more clouds kind of working their way in. But other than a little rain in Missouri, not much on Wednesday. But that rain does ramp up more as we head into Thursday.
Well, a good Tuesday morning to you. Meteorologist Chris Suchan. Look at our forecast today across the region, and we do have a cold front or a less hot front that's heading into South Texas along the Gulf Coast. Behind it, the temperatures are quite a bit cooler, especially up in Oklahoma and portions of Arkansas. Afternoon highs 60s and 70s, mostly partly sunny skies, 80s as you work toward the south. And then on Wednesday, we start off with some cool temperatures, and then really a nice day on Wednesday with highs 70s and 80s across the region.
Hey, good Tuesday morning, everybody. I'm meteorologist Stella Sun. High pressure will continue to bring dry weather across the Pacific Northwest and inland Northwest. Meanwhile, an area of low pressure will bring in some cloud cover as well as some scattered shower activity across Southern California. High temperatures will be in the low 60s across LA, San Francisco, and warm and mostly dry across Phoenix in the middle 90s there. 66 degrees in Seattle and low 70s in Portland. That's the scene from here.
Watching the National Weather Desk.
Hurricane season is less than 2 months away, so what kind of season are weather experts predicting so far? Meteorologist Riley Blackwell takes a look at the early forecast.
So late last week, the brilliant minds of the tropical forecasting world at Colorado State University released an early outlook for the 2025 hurricane season. And they are right now forecasting a slightly above average season with 17 named storms, 9 hurricanes, and 4 major hurricanes. But when you put that into a climatological perspective from 1991 to 2020, we usually get about 14 named storms, about 7 hurricanes, and about 3 major hurricanes. But right now, there's still a lot of questions about what the long-term teleconnections or the upper levels of the atmosphere will do. So, of course, right now, the forecast can certainly change. But if we get 17 named storms for the names this year, that would go all the way to Rebecca. But of course, first, we'll have to get Andrea for the first named storm of the year. Remember, hurricane season starts on June 1st. Back to you.
And thank you so much for joining us. I'm Angela Brown. Make it a great day, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.